the dance form itself, that what they call step, that comes out of Africa. And in fact, I don't know if you ever heard of something called the South African gumboot dancers, because they use a lot of. So again, when it comes to Africa, the people in America, a lot of them came from Africa in the first place. When they came, when they were brought, they weren't allowed to have their own names or religion or their own musical instruments. So what they would do is they replaced the drum with their bodies. So that's part of the story as well. It didn't come out there, but that's part of the story. The woman who directed this film, her mother set up that school. So her mother actually sort of fundraised and got the building. It was actually, the building you saw there is a converted YWCA, which is changed into a school. It's what they call a public charter school. And it's only been going since 2009. So to help her mum out, Miss Lipitz, who directed this film, would go and do promotional videos for the school to actually get the school kind of clientele and get funds. So she was always in and out the school making films. So the kids were very used to her coming around and making films of them. And one time she went there, and Blessing, who was the kind of the lead of the group there, she said to Miss Lipitz, you must come and film us, because we're doing something really different, something unusual. And of course, as you saw there, she actually set up that step in the first place. So then Miss Lipitz went and filmed, or went to see them step, and that's when she said, I've got to make a film. Because her background is in musical production, so she produced something. There's a show in America called Legally Blonde. It's a Broadway show. She produced that, and she thought, as soon as she saw them step, she thought, well, this is real musical drama. Let me film this, and let me make a film of it. So she did it. She took it to Sundance. There was a bidding war for it. I think Fox Searchlight paid about $4 million for it, and it had a limited release in this country. So some people got to see it, but it wasn't given a huge push, put it that way. And that's partly why we thought we'd put it on here, so we could actually get a chance to actually sit down, appreciate the film, and have a discussion about the film. So Michelle, Dr. Michelle Asantewa, you just came in. How much of the film did you get to see?
Most of it I saw when they were sketching the individual, the ones that they were going to focus on. I saw.
So just tell us, any comments in the film so far, as far as you're concerned?
Well, obviously it was like hold back the tears. Kind of thing. I don't know how many of you were straining to do that. Sometimes I wasn't straining. But just really powerful, very emotionally driven, and how each of the individual young ladies, they were a manifestation of the almost a deferred dream, if you like, of their parents, and perhaps you can push it back parents' generations before that. So they were kind of a manifestation of what their parents, or their mothers particularly, had dreamed. And the fathers, obviously, because we didn't get to see the father's narrative. And the power of that regressed self-belief, if you like, because the dream is still there. It's just deferred from the parents' point of view. But somehow the dream has to manifest. It has to come through. And it does very powerfully through the power of self-belief as well. So I found that quite moving.
One of the things the director said is that the feedback she got from a lot of young black women was that they said to her, that's the first time I've seen myself portrayed on the screen like that. So thank you very much for that. And actually, the director made sure that the STEP team crew, when she showed the film at Sundance, she brought them along to watch it. So they got to see it as a crew by themselves, first of all, and they all loved it. But then they got to watch that film in a 400-seat audience like this one. So they were inside the room watching the film with all these other people who were reacting like you reacted. So for them, it's really boosted their self-esteem. They found it an incredible experience to actually see the film with a bunch of people that didn't know them, but who were rooting for them, encouraging them.
And I think what's powerfully shown there, I think they were doing one of the boosting talks, and it was the mother, I think, and the auntie, or I can't remember who it was, but they said about how the mother is going to be a partnership. Is going to be a partnership, and it's going to be the village. They use the African proverb, or the African concept or ethos, if you like, of a village taking responsibility for raising the child. And if some of us actually really embrace that fully, then you would find indeed that you would excel, and you wouldn't have exceptions, because we wouldn't want just exceptions to a rule that no one can really can kind of work their way through easily. So I think that's really important to have the role models, but also to have that ethic of who is really responsible for elevating or to enable the individual to self-actualize. And what I like as well, what I didn't say, Tony, when you asked, was the way Blessing certainly showed the way the film went back to Blessing now doing the transgenerational. Because it's important that, okay, so you might excel exceptionally, you therefore are the exception to a rule that all the energy and all the focus was on this one child. So, for example, is it Nasa or Taylor? I can't remember. Taylor, it was just her, that was the one child that parent had. Whereas in Blessing's case, there were lots of children, and the other, the one that was valedictorian, she was the one of 6 children. And so energy is focused on them, and then what happens to those other children, if you like, how much energy is then put onto them. So it's quite good that the film shows Blessings transgenerationally taking on that new step of bringing out a new set of, because it's not just, you're not doing this for yourself, you're doing this as part of a community, integral to that community. The other thing that I think is important from the film is I think I touched on it, the power of self-belief from an understanding the movement or the place from which you have traveled to some kind of destination, some kind of evolution of yourself that isn't necessarily going to stop at I have achieved academically and that's it. It's like understanding the extremities of being a human being, is what I'm trying to say. Is understanding that the human being can, wherever the human being starts from, it needs to know that it can travel, it can move from that place, it can yet move from that place, and move to have, so for example, if it happens to be privileged, which obviously this film, the young ladies in there weren't coming from, but they have to understand that the human being has to struggle, it has to struggle towards self-fulfillment, and there are people's and experiences put in place that enable that process. And it's a very powerful human expansion that takes place when you realize that actually, is this film really about the young people getting to college? Or is it about them becoming the best that they can be in a given moment in time? Is it about, say, Blessing overcoming, which we didn't quite get to see, the ism that she was having with Taylor and, what's the other one, Nisa? What happened in that moment? Is it about that as a strong test of her character, that she can ultimately overcome that and then move on from there and to move to the space where she's a whole, total person that is now part of that, a product of the village that is making her, and a part of the experiences is also part of that product that is making her. So for me, it was about that journey of the human self, the human development as well, so that we don't get trapped and we don't encourage totally our young people to be thinking, yeah, you know, you do this, you work really hard, and then you're going to be like this famous person, and that's it, life ends. You know, it doesn't quite, for me, work that way. It's about what you become, how your character is fully molded into your full potential as a human being.